A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and welcome to a Thursday evening I've been looking forward to for some time, because over the course of the last fortnight I have been sitting patiently listening to the South African cricket great Faf du Plessis bang on about his book, and it's a very good book. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. We have it on the Dan Nichols show this evening, but both Faf and I have actually not really wanted to talk about the book. What we really wanted to talk about is the shared passion of wine. And so today, after book launches at Exclusive Books and appearances on the Dan Nichols show and dinners at Royal Johannesburg at the Old Oak, we have now got the opportunity this evening to talk about that real love that Mr. du Plessis has for wine. Why does he have it? How did he get into wine? Why was it India that really formed the platform from falling in love with wine? Well, this evening we will find out all of that, and do so in partnership with one of Faf's very good friends, Wynand Grobler, who's also been on the show before, who in the past you may remember from Rickety Bridge, but is now the chief architect behind two wine brands, both of them in Faf's growing global wine portfolio, the Kleine Wijn Koop and the First 11. The First 11 being the original, the wine that stemmed out of the story of falling in love with it properly in India, and then the Kleine Wijn Koop, a more recent acquisition, but one that is giving the brand, the company, some really cool, really different, really exciting wines. And we're going to be talking about some of those this evening with both Faf, who's, I think, just finished his 9th signing session of the day, such as the popularity of Through Fire, his critically acclaimed autobiography, and with Wynand. So all that is coming up in just a moment as we talk wine and maybe a tiny little bit of cricket. But before we do that, here's today's wine news. Well, this is the second Dan Really Likes Wine charity auction, and it is coming up in just under 2 weeks' time, Monday the 21st of November. We will be at Strauss & Co. in Houghton if you wish to join us physically, or you can log on to the Strauss website, and from 7 p.m. on the 21st, we are going to be auctioning an incredible selection of wine. More than 50 different wine producers have given us everything from big bottles to vertical collections to rare and old bottles. We've got luxury weekends away at places like Bartony and Plaisir, and trip to Bruce Jack that you will never forget. There is just a seriously cool selection of wine, and every cent from that event goes via the Nickel Foundation to Reach for a Dream and to the Pinotage Youth Development Academy down in the Winelands, which is doing a remarkable job. I had a look at some of their stats the other day. Last year, 91% of the students who came through the wine hospitality course, a one-year course, were able to either go straight into employment or to go on to further study, which in our current state of unemployment is a wonderful, wonderful piece of news to get. So very proud to be helping out them, very proud to be helping out Reach for a Dream. Disclaimer, I do sit on the Exco for Reach for a Dream, so I'm always happy to support a cause I know particularly well. If you'd like to join us, tickets are at Web Tickets, 350 rand, includes wine and canapes for the night. You get me as your auctioneer and a selection of terrific wine. I'm very excited to be selling for two quite wonderful causes. So 21st of November, either at the Strauss & Co. headquarters, Houghton Estate, or online. Either way, we'd love to see you and we'd love to have your support. So please do join us one way or the other. And I think we have just got a frozen screen there for a second. We have coming up, I think, is this the brandy? I'm just not quite seeing my screen for a moment. Franschhoek, there we go. It is the Franschhoek Champagne Festival, Cap Classique and Champagne Festival. This is Daryl Robertson in full flight once again. An event we haven't had for a little while, but is back up and running in Franschhoek. This is the first weekend of December. There'll be a lot of great local producers. Villiera will be there. There'll be Anthony Rupert amongst them. Just a whole pile of locals, but also some international French champagne, so you can compare and contrast and see what you like. plenty of food, music, and it's really just a very glamorous and elegant garden party. Kicks off at 11 a.m. Tickets between 4 and 450 Rand, and those are available at Web Tickets. And I think we might be doing something around that on the show in the next little while. And then on something I had today, this was a taste of a brand new brandy. Now, you can see it on the left there. That is the inventor. In the middle, that's Tinashe Nyamudoka, the Zimbabwean star of Blind Ambition. He was trying some of it. He actually won the big brandy challenge. And then Johan on the right there. Johan used to be the head distiller at Distel, made everything for 35 years or thereabouts. And he's known as Mr. Brandy to many people. He's brought out 2 brandies, and the key one, which is the Blanco, the one you can see there, Chenin Blanc base, not Colombard, a Chenin Blanc base. There's also, interestingly, some Sauvignon Blanc in there amongst the 4 varietals that have been chosen. There is also an Invento Rosso made with red wine, which is a little unusual in South Africa. A very different style of brandy, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, the grapes there. Just released, very small volumes, and look out beyond that for gin and whiskey and rum and all sorts of spirits that Johan will be producing. But for now, the inventor, starting with a couple of brandies and showing just what you can do with grapes like Chenin Blanc if you want to nudge them in a different direction. So the inventor, well done, Johan. That was at Marble earlier on today. Expect to see and hear a lot more of that going forward. Expect to also hear and see a lot more over the next few weeks, possibly months, about a book called Through Fire, because Faf du Plessis' quite remarkable autobiography, which, as I've said to him a number of times, both between the two of us in conversation, but also while chatting in front of various audiences, is an incredibly honest, it's an incredibly revealing and incredibly vulnerable book that's completely different to anything else I've read in a sporting memoir space. It is a terrific read, one I cannot recommend highly enough, particularly because there are some, albeit fleeting, mentions of wine. And that is not surprising, because if you know Faf, you'll know that wine is something he really, really loves. I'll get frequent messages from him. He's off on tour. Nothing about the caliber of his cover drive or how he thinks the pitch is going to play the next day, but instead he's just discovered a bottle of Penfolds while on a wine tour in South Australia, or he's sitting in the IPL and one of the other players has brought out a cracking bottle of Californian Cabernet Sauvignon. It is a genuine interest, a genuine love, and so we welcome Faf onto the show, along with Wynand, the winemaker at the 2 brands that Faf and Wynand co-own. It is the First 11 brand and the Kleine Wijn Koop. So a very good evening, Mr. du Plessis, and a very good evening, Mr. Grobler. Lovely to have you both.
How's it, Dan?
Thank you so much, Dan. I've enjoyed our week together so much. You are by far the best guy to introduce me. So I'm very grateful that you were there with the book. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. It's been a huge amount of fun, and not just for me. I think everybody who's been part of the events has really enjoyed it, because they've been, I think, in many ways just a little surprised, because the Faf du Plessis we see, he's always immaculately dressed in next year's fashion that he's somehow got already, and there's not an ounce of fat, and the hair's perfect, and it's kind of this male model look that hides this really steely character which comes through in the book, but which also people might think, well, this is a guy, clearly he just he eats boiled chicken breasts, broccoli and protein shakes, and that's the extent of his diet. But that's certainly not the case, and mainly it's the wine that comes through as something that is different to what people might expect, and that for me is so much fun to talk about, because it's a story that kicked off really in an unlikely space. You had wine before, it was something not something you've never drunk, but it was actually going to India that really pushed you in the direction of discovering this true love of wine.
Sure. Once again, what an introduction that was. Chicken breast, broccoli, fashion. Most of it sounds accurate, but there's also a lot of not so much. There's an ongoing investigation. As you can see, it's always working on it. But no, wine, yeah, it's a story, isn't it? I love sitting with people and talking about wine. And the story of our wine was myself and Wynand was, we were sitting one night in Ranchi in India, which is a very almost like a small town in India, but obviously there's no small town in India because all the towns are full of a lot of people. But it's almost like a little farm town, and there wasn't a lot going on. And what we do in the IPL is we have a wine club. So, guys coming in from New Zealand and Australia and England, all over the world, obviously South Africa, and we each take 2 or 3 bottles of wine to just have with us in case we get to a city that is a little bit where the bar doesn't stock up on red wine. And Ranchi is a place where it's a dry city, which means that you're not allowed to sell alcohol most of the time. But then we take our bottles of wine with us. And we were sitting in Ranchi and we were just talking wine stories, and myself, Stephen Fleming, Mike Hussey, Brendan McCullum. There was another Aussie there as well. Anyway, I forget his name. But we were sitting there and we were talking about wine, and we were talking about if you could make your own wine, what kind of wine would it be? What kind of grape would it be? What would you call it? And like the first thing that jumped into my head was First 11. Obviously, cricket, it's got the connotation. And we're like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. And we're like, but not the 11, the XI, because of the Roman numerals. And then we were like if you had to pick a starting 11 of wine drinkers, what would that look like? And then we said, if we could make a wine in South Africa, what grape would be the most famous wine of that country? And obviously South Africa's Pinotage is unique to South Africa. And then you move to Australia and you've got these big, bold Shirazes. You go over to New Zealand and it's these amazing Pinot Noirs. So it started like that. And then I said, guys, this is amazing. I think we've got something here. Let's really, obviously we were a few glasses in, so then everything sounds like a great idea. But then I said, okay, I'm going to take it back. I've got a very good friend in South Africa that I'm going to talk to that's an unbelievable winemaker. And I'm going to just drop this story with him. And I came back literally the next day, phoned after the IPL, phoned Wynand, and I was like, what do you think of this? It might be the world's stupidest idea. And he was like, I'm in, let's do it. And that's literally like that started the First 11 brand, which consists of 3 red, which are cricket names, but it's also a very cool name. So the one is the Belter, the Partnership, and the Centurion. So 3 blends that are very different, but very easy drinking wine.
I'm fascinated to know who made that first 11 of cricketing wine drinkers. But before we get some revelation on that, just why it was that wine hit such a spot for you. What was the mystery, the intrigue, the delight that said, this is something I want to know more about. This is something I really want to get involved with?
I think, well, first of all, drinking wine wasn't something that was always a part of me. I think, when you're younger, your taste buds are not quite there yet. Maybe because possibly the first wine that I had was Tassenberg, which doesn't really qualify as a fantastic wine. But in Hatfield, a 10 rand pop suck was all we could afford back then. And then it became this thing where through my girlfriend at the time, Emery, she ordering some bottles of wine for us, and really through that process of just dating and sitting together and talking, started falling in love with the idea of wine. And then through that it grown into this beautiful story of like, if you could have your own wine, what would it be? And today, sitting here now, I absolutely love wine stories. I love to try new wines and get to a place and ask them what is the wine that is local when you're traveling the world. So it's just so fascinating for me that you can go to different places in the world and wine are so unique.
And that brings us rather nicely to the partnership with Wine in South Africa, which has got a whole range of wines, many of which you have tapped into with your friend Wynand, who you mentioned a moment ago. Wynand, take us back and let's see if Faf's recollection is as accurate as yours is. You reckoned you were delighted and thought this was a brilliant idea. Were you really quite so enthusiastic? And did you believe that this was something that Faf would jump into for the long haul, as it turned out he has?
Yeah, Dan, so thanks again for having us. It's great to be back. Faf called me, and I think he forgets to say that we actually met over a couple of, I wanted to say glasses, but it really was a couple of bottles of wine. Again, a bunch of us around the table having one, and we all thought it was a great idea. So yes, and we discussed it in depth. I used to be, I started my winemaking career at Ernie Els. So I sort of knew how, the Ali Slaggat, all the sort of where you can go wrong with the, celeb wines. And I think the one thing we said, like, we don't want to make just a celeb wine. We really wanted to focus on something, making something really good. People, even if they don't know that Faf is behind the brand, that they must really enjoy the brand, and there must be a great following. So, and to be fair, like, we drank enough wine together to know that Faf, he was completely in love with wine. So loved it, loved drinking it, enjoyed it with all his mates and us. So it was great. Yeah. So he's a good partner to have and to be in the business with.
That Ernie Els reference is a great one to make. We had Ernie on the show last year talking about his wine journey, and he made a very simple but very telling point, which was the name Ernie Els can sell the first vintage, but it's got to be the wine that sells the second. And from what you've said, it sounds like that was very much front of mind. Yes, it's great to have a big name cricketer with a massive following who can help with some of the marketing, but ultimately it's got to be what's inside the bottle rather than the name on the front of it that's going to make the difference.
No, exactly. I couldn't agree more. So, and thank goodness we have Faf, who I think probably drinks half of the vintage himself, in the business. No.
Great to see him supporting. Faf not contesting that one too aggressively. One of the stories that both Ernie tells, but also Louis Louis Stradham at Ernie Els, that first time they sat down seriously to create what was to become the Ernie Els signature, where Louis had a whole pile of different varietals and he gave them to Ernie, who'd grown up in Kempton Park, where wine is perhaps not always an integral part of the diet, and he kept going back to this same style. And it was a left bank style Bordeaux blend. Faf, in terms of getting into the wine, was it something that you were so involved with? Did you want to make sure that this was wine that spoke to your palate, that spoke to the style of wine that says, yeah, Francois du Plessis is going to drink this happily?
Yeah, so I mean, Wynand was great in this process because I mean, at that stage, I couldn't really describe exactly what it was that I liked. The only thing I could do is talk about in tasting what are the kind of things that I'm looking for, So for me, initially, it was like something that's very drinkable, very smooth, very easy, that you can just keep drinking it. It sounds like I've got a problem after Wynand mentioned that, but it's just very easy. Like the more you taste it, the more you just want it. So not extremely heavy rates is initially what we were talking about. And he got it spot on. I mean, the blends that he made, we were talking about the love of Pinot Noir, Bordeaux style wines, quite easy drinking Shirazes. So he got it spot on. I was there with him and he took me through the whole process, tasted basically from the barrel and you go, oh, is that what I'm going to taste like? But then obviously the process of mixing stuff and putting a little bit almost like a science project. So I was really, really happy to be there in the beginning and just make him help me, obviously a master like him or yourself. It's just great to be on those conversations where you can just learn. And that was awesome. And then even 2-3 years later when we, with his family and his kids and me jumping on the grapes there and the pressing of the wine, it's just, for me, it's just the experience and the stories you do with people around you.
And there was obviously the enthusiasm started with Faf, but how quickly did that enthusiasm grow into a real thirst for knowledge and a real desire to understand why you liked what you did and how what was in your glass came to be?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. I mean, I can compare that to anything that I do, whether it's cricket, batting, life, drinking wine. This thing that you just want to keep growing. So for me, I've always got this thing inside of me that just wants to go a little bit further and a little bit deeper into getting to know stuff and get better at stuff. So I'm a super competitive guy. So when I drink wine, it's not to drink more wine, but it's just get better at tasting wines and smelling wines and, talking wines. I was with Wynand one night and it was the most remarkable experience. He was talking about, he was doing a wine tasting with us at one of the guest houses and he had different wines from different countries. And he was doing a blind tasting of, and he could speak, exactly what part of what country in the world, which side, what grape, what, everything about it. And I was like, what is going on here? How does your nose and your mouth get this right so good? So yeah, I'm very much keen to learn from the two of you. So Dan, like I've been saying, I'm going to be visiting you quite a bit when I come play in Joburg, just so I can learn from the master.
Master might be pushing it a bit, but certainly enthusiast, and my cellar awaits. And there are a few bottles from your two different labels, including the one that kicked it all off. What was the challenge for you, Van, first of all, in deciding, yes, it's fast palate to a degree, but you want to create something that's got to be commercially viable and has some appeal and some attraction. And then from there, what must have been quite a big step for you, which was saying, all right, well, goodbye Rickety Bridge. I've got a good job with a dental plan and a health plan, and my parents are happy. I've settled down, and I'm throwing it all away to run after my mate Faf and make some wine.
Yeah. So I'll start with the first question, Dan. And what, it was quite easy having done, again, I'm not saying, Faf, you don't drink that much, I'm only kidding, but drank so much wine with Faf. I sort of knew what he liked and what he wanted, and exactly he was always leaning more towards Rhone, getting more Shiraz driven, proper Rhone style blends, and doing the blending through the cellar. You mentioned there were about 40 there were about 40 barrels we got through, and eventually said to me, listen, he trusts me. If the next couple of the boys are here, the next couple of barrels are the same, whatever, he'll trust me, I can do the blend from here. So it was quite nice, after we did the final blends, I knew you'd like it and I knew the stuff would work. Obviously gave it to my wife to try. She's usually the final QC. So Anya said, she gave it a thumbs up, and we said this is going to work. And it obviously worked. So we're sitting, and as you said, and then the next part of the story is we actually, I wasn't sure whether we really had to move forward with this. It's a big leap, as you said. Everything was properly, aligned at Rickety Bridge, whatever we're going. And then Faf actually over one dinner, I don't even know if he recalls it. I hope he does. He said to me, oh, I'm not sure if we should do this. And he said, listen, he backs me, whatever, let's just go flat out, 100%, let's do it. So it was yes, and now for lack of, it was a I struggle to find the words, but it was a sort of a belief call. Faf just said, listen, backs me, trusts me, let's do it. So, and we started running with it, and here we are today. So the business has grown quite nicely. It's great. Yeah, here we are.
It's going extremely nicely, and it's growing as well. Talk us through the process, Wynand, of then deciding that there was this little brand with an Afrikaans name with a series of wines that almost nobody could pronounce unless they've done a PhD in Afrikaans or are Dutch and very drunk. And hang on, this is going to be the space we want to move into. This is the brand we'd like to buy and expand the business with.
Yeah, so then we a bunch of mates, they were dabbling around in this brand business called the Kleine Wine Koop, so the small wine company. And we had the opportunity to buy it over and take it over, and being sort of involved on the sides. And we took the chance. Again, we approached our investors, winemaker salary. We couldn't necessarily buy it ourselves, and the guys were very keen once we showed them the awesome sort of authentic Afrikaans, very quirky labels and names, and we had access to great vineyards, just some of the best spots in South Africa where we could access these grapes, and ons het toegang gehad, and it was just a no-brainer to us. And obviously it gave Faf a lot more options to drink during the week, so you could go from his Rhone blend to Pinot Noir to Sauvignon Blanc to a 70-year-old Cinsault vineyard. So that was also a nice prey to the business. And it really opened up a lot of doors for us to make some awesome wines and get it distributed all over the world.
Yeah, and that's Wine right Santiago white. Wow. Moving to Cape Town, I wasn't a big white wine drinker, but when I tasted that, I was like, this is unbelievable. So that's super good.
All right. Well,
Thanks.
tell us a bit, Faf, tell us a bit about the road to Santiago, what it is, and why you feel it's quite so good.
Yeah, so what I love most about a very good white wine is the buttery, it just rolls over your tongue taste. I mean, and that is the best way for me to describe it. Like there's the, the flowers and all the smells and everything, but that smooth, buttery, just rolls over your tongue. And I tasted it, and I phoned him straight away and I said, Wynand, this is unbelievable white wine. Like, wow, how did you get this right? So the problem now with it is always sold out, so I can't get my hands on it for my house. So Wynand, please save me some when you make some new ones.
Dan, so Faf obviously has very expensive taste. Like, I mean, we only make 600 bottles of that, and like it is a platter 5-star the whole thing. So good taste.
Unbelievable.
And it also
Wayne, would that be a right description? I mean, I don't know if there's anything close to buttery, creamy, whatever, but it's so creamy.
Yeah.
Well, I think if it's a wine that you immediately highlight, what it does is it says just how serious you guys are about the wine that you're making, because what you've got here is an old vine Semillon out of France. I think these are some of the oldest Semillon vineyards we've got in South Africa, and you're only making 600 bottles. This is not some big commercial splash you're trying to make. This is a really special pocket of vines, Wynand, that you've created, something that in itself is fantastic, but which also speaks to a niche of South African wine that is getting more and more interest and acclaim around the world as our old vine Semillon, specifically our Franschhoek old vine Semillon, is turning heads.
Yeah, Dan. So I think I was lucky to be in the right spot at the right time, and I had access to these old vines. And a guy called Basil Landau gave me the opportunity to work with these grapes and to obviously make it a part of our brand. So Franschhoek Semillon is like, as you know, in the last 10 years, it's just taken off. So our first vintage was 2014, and Decanter, they absolutely raved about the stuff. So, and ever since, so Franschhoek just has this sort of magic touch with old vine Sems and Sems, the old GD1 clones where the guys planted there on the sort of alluvial and decomposed sandstone soils, really sort of, mimicked, a lot of the Bordeaux sort of plains. So, I mean, it just worked. We were at the right spot. But yes, we focus, a lot of our wines are sort of small vineyard stuff, particularly going for some old vines as well, like we find in Stellenbosch or Paul, or wherever we can get our hands on them, maybe Piccaninny's Kloof or Grenache. So it's just South Africa's got so much potential for great vines all over the show, and these old vineyards that we have access to. So it's a great time to be in the South African industry and getting international acclaim, as you said. So it's not just we're dabbling around in commercial, sending it out there.
It's not the only wine that has got a lot of interest from your selection. The Otreffer is one that's got a lot of attention. You've got a really nice Cabernet Sauvignon that I still can't pronounce and probably never will be able to. And then there's a wine which is intriguing from the moment you see it, because the label makes you think that you've got a designer who's possibly pushed the boundaries of acceptable narcotics consumption a little too far, because it's completely bizarre and changing, and that is Criterier. Tell me a bit about that, how that came about, and in particular that label, which has got so much fun to it.
Yeah, so what a great little wine we have there. So it's a wine that started out of this, all these Rhone varietals that we have access to, and that we're making the first 11, the Belter from Faf as well. We have access to awesome Rhone-style grapes that really are well suited in South African climate and conditions. And we had access to these vines, and we decided to make this, obviously South Africa is great for Rhone-style, and we decided to put them in the Criterier. So this is one example of it, Dan. You said a little creature. So that creature changes every year as the blend changes. And I think it was more again by chance than by design that it happened that way. We just realized the next year that we have a bunch of different Rhone-style varietals going into this wine, so we have to change the label, No. So we decided to add a little creature. That's 2019 when we won the World Cup, by the way. We gave a little springback head. But we decided to blend all these grapes together. You know, we literally just take the best barrels and put it into a nice blend, and hopefully it works. I'm only kidding. We obviously do the blend before that. We do these blends, and they just seem to work, and it works perfectly for South Africa. And the label's so much fun. We have a worldwide following now, guys. You know, that we have to send it to countries if we don't export it there. They order the new vintage every year. And the new vintage is out now, by the way. Dan, I don't know if you have some in your cellar already, but it's going strong, and it's as I said, varietals that really suit South Africa well. So the wine is just an absolute no-brainer to make and to have in our range.
Dan, we were planning a Protea Creature for the Proteas winning the World Cup this year.
We can do that.
He's talking about 2019 there. Wijn, tell him the story about the Koop.
I don't know. Dan is a married man, but I'll tell you in any case, Dan, so every year the Koop, we write a little poem, and we add a sulfur number of one of our single friends. So we give a good description, and if you're interested, you guys, you know, like we usually hand it out at the tastings and to all the single ladies and say, just give the guy a ring. So very unsuspecting candidate. He doesn't know until he gets his first phone call, but then he has about 2 years of expected calls, like, you know, late night calls coming his way.
Oh, that is absolutely brilliant. Of course, it's covered in the book because that's how Emery met Faf, and it works out particularly well. What a way to wind up your mates. How excited do you get, Faf, when Vanna gives you a call and says, right, you know, the new vintage is out, or we've got hold of a new pocket, and I think we're going to make something different and special? Does it genuinely excite you?
No, it's awesome because, I mean, you know, as you said, we started with 3, you know, partnership artists ensuring of the first 11, and then the Kleine Wijn came as an opportunity. But then he phones me and he's like, I've made another new one. I'm like, what? You've already done so much, like, you know. And then it's like, come and taste it. And every time there's something new that comes, and it just blows my mind. So Creature was one of those. It was just one of those really, really soft, beautiful reads, and I loved it. And I mean, the last one you've added to the collection, Wijn, you can talk about that. It's also an unbelievable name, but once again, not too many bottles produced. So I'm not sure exactly how many, Wijn. How much is the latest one?
Yeah, we did about 1,000 cases, and that was this vintage of 2021 is the first one we actually used Carignan from. So I came across this vineyard. I'm not sure whether there's more than 2 hectares of it planted in South Africa, but in Rebecca still on a great little patch just behind me, where you might know them. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't just like give away my vineyard's secrets, you know. But on a very famous little patch of land there, the farm owner, the farmer, the grower, planted some Carignan, which is this very sort of, you know, obscure little Rhone-style varietal. And we made it, tried it out, you know, a couple of experiments, and it worked a charm. So we decided to blend it into the Creature. So this year we have a 5 varietal blend. It's a Grenache, Noir, Cinsault, Syrah, Mourvedre, and Carignan blend. So, and it really is, it's got that sort of lightness to it, like the freshness of the acidity, but also the fullness, the richness. I always say this is my all-rounder wine where, like, you know, my mates from Bloem, you know, drinking brandy, I can pour them a glass of Creature and they love it. All my sort of winemaker mates and Faf who drinks a lot of wine, you know, they also like it. So it is not that much wine, Faf, don't worry. But
I think that's the thing that's been said the most here tonight, is how much wine I drink. I think you're confusing me with Dan Nicol.
Like, people do get us mixed up all the time, Faf, so that's fair enough.
Skinny jeans, eh?
Skinny jeans. Mine are tight in the wrong places, unfortunately. What about this newest one? I saw something pop up in my inbox today. Wynand, this, I think, is out of Walker Bay. You've added a Pinot Noir to the collection.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. So I did a couple of vintages in Burgundy back in the early 2000s, and I just loved it. You know, I always said I'll make a Pinot once I find the right vineyard, and I literally waited 10 years for this farmer to actually say to me, sure, I can have some of the grapes. So 2019 was our first vintage, and we've just released the 2020, our new vintage. And I think we are much closer to where I want to be, like sort of Pinot Noir style. The vineyards are, are absolutely amazing. It's just whatever I do in the cellar, I'm going to have to sort of, try and keep that pureness and sort of focus on the Pinot. So it's a great little vineyard. It's a clone. They call it PN Pinot Noir 115, and it's just sort of the base of all your great Pinots all around the world. And now we have access to it, and like on great sort of decomposed granite soils, lots of sandstone, so well drained, like on the Atlantic Ocean. So it's cool climate. As you know, sort of that region, Walker Bay, Yamuna, Elgin, I think is sort of the heart of Pinot Noir. Some of the guys also obviously making in Ceres, up the Berg, they're making some nice Pinots from there. But I think Pinot needs that cool climate, needs that sort of decomposed granite soils, it gives it that sort of elegant structure. In any case, we got contact, finally got the grapes into the cellar. I treated it as sort of puristic as possible, just, let it be. And 2020 is out now. So excited about that. Again, like one of our sort of smaller volume wines. So that goes all over the world. So I just love making that wine and drinking it, I think. And Faf, I've no doubt you like it. So I think your case is on your way.
Yes, I'm my mouth's watering. I can't wait.
And it's watering because of this love of wine and understanding and knowledge and passion for which has grown and grown. And that is what would have made probably the saddest moment, Faf, in your entire book even more so. It begins with the most beautiful story of an unlikely accolade for a South African cricketer from an Australian who aren't terribly nice to anybody in a South African cricket shirt. And yet this changed. You got the most wonderful gift. And then it finished off. I mean, this is a Halloween horror story, this is. So grab a box of tissues. Faf, tell us about what is probably, forget Mintgate, forget Zipgate, forget Sandpapergate, forget Air Hostess Gate. You'll read that in chapter 26. Give us Penfolds Gate, because this is just terrible.
Yes, I mean, I'll try and keep the story a little bit shorter because there's a lot of context to it. But yeah, Mike Hussey, after the first test in my debut, which was a remarkable day for me, knocked on the door after the test, and they said, "There's someone at the door for you." And I went there, and it was Mike Hussey, and he had a bottle of Penfolds. Now, Penfolds it's a fantastic wine, and he wrote this beautiful message, something to the Faf, congrats on an unbelievable test debut. You'll remember this day forever, and I'm really proud of you. And I'm like, whoa, Mr. Cricket has just given me unbelievable bottle of wine, but it's the message for me that just was the best gift I ever received. So yeah, I then went on the next day in the press conference, and then when asked about my innings and everything, I didn't even talk about the cricket. I was like, the best thing about that test match was Mr. Cricket coming in and giving me a bottle of wine. So that story spread through the newspapers quickly. And 3 days later, when I walked out to bat, expecting a lot of abuse again from the Australians, like the previous test match, as I walked in, it was like, "Hey, Huss, here's your mate Faf. Why don't you suck his..." And I was like, whoa, these Aussies are on him. And they stayed on him the whole time I think I got 80 or 90 that test match again. Went back home, packed this beautiful bottle of wine in my suitcase, wrapped it in clothes because this was the best gift ever. Put it in the top shelf of my wine rack back in my previous house. And probably 3 years later, we went away for a weekend, and we decided to get a dog sitter to come and dog sit our house, because obviously someone is going to look after the dogs and feed them. And we left, and I came back on the Sunday evening. The Monday morning, when it was a little bit lighter, looked at my wine rack, and 4 of my top shelf bottles has been drunk. And I was like, no, this can't be happening. Any wine, but please let that bottle of Penfolds gift from us not be taken. And I looked, and it was gone. And I was like, phoned my wife. I was like, where is this bottle? And we searched everywhere through the house, and opened the bin. And in the bin was an empty bottle of Penfolds and 3 other top shelf bottles of wine. So I was super, super angry, and I wanted to, yeah, it's the most angry I think I've ever been, because as I said, it's the best gift I've ever received, and something that money really can't replace. So I found the babysitter, the dog sitter, and I was like, "Where is this wine? Did you see it? It's empty, and you were the only one in the house." And she was like, "Oh, sorry, like we were there at the house, and I just opened a bottle of wine, and I drank the bottle of wine, and I had 3 bottles after that."
And it was delicious.
And I'm here. Did you? I'm here. I'm back. And she said, "I'm sorry, like I drank the bottle of wine." And I was like, "What? You drank?" And she's like, "And also, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that I was an alcoholic." So I was like, "Who?" I said to my wife, "How did you get this person into our house?" I mean, first of all, she drank my best bottle of wine, but also, I mean, I probably shouldn't bring an alcoholic into a wine cellar.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking, because you would have been keeping that, cherishing it, waiting for that perfect moment to drink
I
it.
was never going to drink that bottle of wine. It was just one of those that you wouldn't touch it. It was just too special. So I would probably show that to my kids one day and go, "Do you know this moment?" And yep, it's gone.
Well, look, if there is, there are two silver linings. One is I'm going straight the moment we're done to find the best bottle I can in the cellar to make up for that, for when you're up in Johannesburg for the SA20 early next year. But also, it goes back to cementing your friendship with Mike Hussey, and an unlikely friendship given you are on opposite sides of the trenches. But it became a friendship that goes well beyond cricket and goes well beyond wine, but has those as the two cornerstones. And you built up that first 11 with Mike, with Stephen Fleming, with AB, and that was the initial first 11. You speak of that first 11. We mentioned it at the start of the show, so let's go back there. Who is in Faf du Plessis' wine drinking 11?
Yeah, so it's obviously it has to be cricketers. It can't just be people like yourself, because then the list is just too easy. I can't remember exactly what the list was, but I do remember opening the batting was Brendan McCullum. He is an absolute wine tank. Like, he can just drink wine. Like, I love wine, but I hit a point where I go, okay, I need to wake up tomorrow, and then I go to sleep. He doesn't go there. He just keeps going and going and going. So it was him. Stephen Fleming, not probably the greatest T20 player, but he would make a wine drinking 11. Myself at 3. Mike Hussey was in there. As he was sitting there, obviously you got to pick him. AB de Villiers is why we involved him into the wine, because he is similar to Brendan McCullum, has got a very big tank, as Wynand would second. I'm always the guy that leaves at 12 o'clock, and then Wynand and AB would go and paint the town red with red wine. And then I think, the rest, I cannot remember. It was just Hastings, the bowler from Australia, was with Chennai at that time, and he's a big man, and he can consume a lot of red wine. Sachin Tendulkar actually is a guy that really enjoys his red. Zaire Khan really enjoys his red. So, I mean, you'd be surprised the 11 that you could put down. I mean, I'm not even talking about the Australians that can really take it down, but those were the guys we were talking about that night.
And possibly two others to come into contention. I believe Sam Billings has got some wine connections, and then Kumar Sangakkara allegedly has got a bit of a cellar.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, great story with Sam Billings. His parents has quite a bit of money. So when we did the wine club, and when you go into the airport and you're looking for a bottle of wine, you're looking for something that's nice but not ridiculously expensive. So your range is around 500 rand, a good bottle of red. That's I think in terms of me, it's something that's nice, but you can buy a few bottles. And South African wine I find it's so much value for money. Like, you don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of money on a bottle of red. So Sam Billings, Dan, you know the name. Is it? I told you about it last week. What's it called again?
Was it the Angelus?
Angelus, yeah, Angelus. So you can explain the wine, and then I'll finish the story.
So Angelus, you would have seen us drinking at that Bordeaux dinner with Roland Peens the other day, and there was a few bottles that went at the Strauss auction for tens of thousands of rand. You're talking thousands of US dollars for the current vintage, and you go back older vintages and you start getting into IPL salary category.
Yeah. So I mean, he had that, and naturally, what I do is I always Vivino wine because I want to remember it. So I put it in my library, and then if I like it, I try and order it. But then I take a picture of this and I go, absolutely not. Am I going to buy this? But it was part of the wine club, and we were just waiting for the right time to drink it. And the one night we were playing FIFA in his room. And the whole wine club thing, everyone was waiting for this bottle because this thing was talked about as a super expensive bottle of wine. And I was like, sure, I'm keen for a glass of red now. Should we order a bottle of wine? What do you reckon? And he's like, what about Libertas, whatever it's called? Like, should we not or Angelus, should we not do that? I'm like, yes, of course, let's go for it. But we're not calling anyone because this is like, so it was myself and him that smashed the bottle that night and played it on FIFA. And we text the guys in the wine club. And the next morning, Stephen Fleming has not let this story go. And it's almost been 6 years later. Every time he sees me, he goes, yeah, I remember that. I'm not going to share my wine with you next time.
I can feel his heart break, but I also know I wouldn't have shared it with anybody else if I had it myself. Before I ask you a final wine question, we wrap up, Faf. Just Wynand, from the perspective of the two brands, it seems like they're in a constant sense of evolution. You're finding new stuff to do. You're getting new parcels of wine. Is that kind of just the philosophy going forward, to see when something pops up of interest and add it to the collection?
Yeah, Dan. So definitely, like, I mean, we're in the position where, you know, obviously where we can actually just sort of, if we spot something and we see a new vineyard and I get access to, you know, guys says to me, listen, I've got a ton or two left, come fetch it. So we're in a position to actually go and get it and design a label for it. As you know, we have all these, like, I mean, we have a ton of other labels, like not only the stuff you see behind me. So it's nice to be able to make something, you know, give it its own label, you know, sort of, you know, give it its own life. So it doesn't just fall under, you know, the same brand. So give it its own brand, tell people about the vineyard, tell people where it is. So yes, it definitely is a philosophy. If we see something great and it's a great vintage for a specific varietal, we go for it flat out. So yes, I hope we can continue being like sort of innovative and you know, just exciting. I don't ever want to stagnate and just be another brand. So we almost like, I'm always looking for the next vineyard and like a great little story, you know, come across a vine or, you know, like a specific vineyard that's amazing or it has a great story, and we'll make it and bottle if it's good enough. So yes.
And you might have some more assistance in doing all of that, because one of the questions you fielded a couple of times during our last week or two together around the book launches, Faf, has been the end of the cricket career. The international one, sadly, seems to have had time called upon it, but there is still franchise and T20 cricket to be played around the world. You said you'll look to 40 and then reevaluate, but whether it's 40 or it could be 45, given the shape you're in, when you do finally decide that the Venezuelan T20 league is enough and you're going to stop with the cricket on the field, do you foresee getting a bit more involved in the wine and having a more hands-on role in how it all plays out?
Yeah, I'm probably just be nice to see Wynand a bit more there in his house and take down his cellar and sponge on guys like yourself and him. But I think, yeah, when because then you have a bit more time on your hands, don't you? So I would love that. I would love to, you know, even travel Wynand and do some stuff. We've always spoke about south of France, like, you know, there was talk about us going together and doing that. So when you have time to do more things where you can explore wine in different parts of the world.
And I think that is a perfect way to say goodbye for now, because I've got no doubt we'll have both Wynand and Faf back again on the show soon. Look out some stuff that we're planning to do around wine in the new year when the Josie Super Kings kick off the SA20 with Faf as captain and Dan as unofficial team sommelier for an action-packed January and February. And until then, I will make two recommendations to you all. Definitely grab a hold of Faf's book because it is a compelling read and it tells an extraordinary, slightly unexpected story and one that'll keep you turning the pages until the very end and then possibly starting again. But also go and have a look at that selection of First 11 and the Kleine Wijn Koop wines that from the passion of Faf and then the equal passion, but also expertise of Wynand. He's got quite a track record in making outstanding South African wine. You've got a real selection to go and experiment with, to try out, and I don't think it'll take you too long to find something you really like. Hey guys, thank you so much. It's been great fun, especially Faf getting to talk about wine for a change instead of leadership and vulnerability and having group hugs at signings. Look forward to plenty more of it, and Wijn, I look forward to trying that new Pinot Noir in particular, and some wine together in our respective cellars is on the immediate horizon, and I cannot wait.
Thank you so much, Dan. I loved it. Fine, good to see you.
Same
The Chief Product Testing Officer at the Kleine Wijn Koop, Faf du Plessis, has got a true love for wine, as he showed very vividly today, together with Wynand Grobler, who's making that wine and getting it distributed all over the world. It's a wonderful wine story and one that speaks to two friends who found common ground to launch what is becoming an increasingly successful wine business. That does us for today. I've got some time in Dubai next week, so look out for me testing wine in the Middle East. And we've also got coming up that Dan Really Likes Wine charity auction, Monday, the 21st of November. Great causes, great wine. Hope to see you either there in person or joining us online. Go out and grab that book. And if you are a member of the Pick and Pay Wine Club, I'll be seeing in about 10 minutes time to host tonight's virtual winemakers table with Durbanville Hills and Chef Jonathan and some more lovely food and wine. That does it for this evening. Happy drinking. We'll see you again on Monday for the next live show. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.